Welcome back to the Next Play podcast. I'm your host, Alec White, here with my co-host, Nate Schaefer. How you doing today?
Feeling good to be on the pod again, Spice. It's been way too long.
Feeling
Ready
good to
get
get
started.
going again. Let's do it. Let's jump right into it. All right.
So tell me about your take from seeing the latest NBA Power rankings.
What do you mean my take?
What's the first thing you noticed?
First
Aside
thing I
from
noticed was the
fucking
Utah
Blazers?
Jazz are number one. What do you mean? What's the first thing I
Yeah.
noticed? That was going into this season. No one was expecting that. They basically had the exact same roster. Like essentially, all their main guys, they kept their all-stars, Donovan Mitchell, and Rudy Gobert, and then they kept their big role guys, Jordan Clarkson, Bogdanovich, and I'm forgetting who their power forward is. But I mean, they've just been playing way better than anyone expected them to. And one, I don't know how sustainable it is. Like, are they just going to be this year's Atlanta Hawks team that kind of killed through the regular season and then just got booted right away in the playoffs? Or are they for real? I don't know. I haven't seen them play against too many like top contenders. I think this week they're playing. Give me 2 seconds. This week they will match up against the Lakers. They got Charlotte, Los Angeles Lakers, Miami, and Orlando. So not the toughest stretch, but
One slate of comp. When I think about the Jazz, I told you earlier I haven't watched enough of their games, but the three talking points that I feel like are worth bringing up. I mean, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are more or less what they were. I don't think either of them have made huge statistical leaps, and just based on the attention they're getting, I don't think they're like blowing people out of the water this year. They're obviously playing very good basketball. They're both
I would agree. Yeah,
locked all-stars in my opinion. But the three guys I think are worth mentioning the most when you're talking about why are they so damn good all of a sudden. I mean, first of all, Bojan Bogdanovich wasn't with them in the bubble last year. I know he's not like he's not necessarily their third best player. Like he might be on some nights, but I wouldn't say most nights that's him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a important scoring outlet they have that they didn't have in the playoffs last year when we last saw them. The next is definitely Jordan Clarkson, their sixth man, midseason acquisition last year. Was showing signs last year, but it's definitely hit his stride. And
absolutely,
it's impressive to say that he's more or less a lock for the sixth man of the year award at this point in the season. It's very, very early, and there's no one in sight to contend with him at all.
Yeah.
So like that definitely says a lot as to their success and Jordan Clarkson's ability to thrive in his new role. Good for him. Very good for the Jazz. And then the third guy is Mike Conley.
Yeah.
Mike Conley last year had some good games, but more or less I'd always been a big Mike Conley fan because I always loved Marc Gasol on that Grizzlies team.
Yeah.
And Conley always helped them win. And then he goes to the Jazz, and it was like a big deal. Like he's a lifetime Grizz guy, goes to the Jazz, new territory, new roster trying to work with. And he didn't really turn a lot of heads last year. I think last year was his first year.
Yeah, no, last year everyone was very underwhelmed.
Yeah, he didn't do a whole lot. I'm pretty sure he was out of the bubble for a spell, maybe for like a birth of a kid or something like that. But
that sounds right. But he was definitely there for most of.
Yeah, no, he was around a lot and didn't do much. And then this year he's like playing like his old self, which is great to see. At least statistically. Again, I haven't seen enough of him.
Right.
Because for some reason the media hates Jazz games. R.I.P. I got to get on the League Pass gang, I guess. But
sir.
Yeah, so I think if you want to talk about why the hell are the Jazz good, it starts with those three guys, not necessarily in that order, maybe in reverse order, because Conley is balling.
Most people have been pointing to Mike Conley. But I mean,
that's where I'd start.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see. Like I said, there's a lot of question marks of how sustainable it is come playoff time. Are they peaking too early? So that's to be determined.
There's definitely a big difference between regular season basketball and playoff basketball when it comes to the NBA.
Absolutely.
It's just like in a 7-game series, we're seeing a little bit of it this year with a lot of back-to-backs.
Right.
Where teams are playing each other on consecutive nights just because of the schedule mishaps with COVID. And the second game, is almost always more competitive, which is really exciting. I always try and pluck out those games to make a point to watch. And it's because like they know the matchups, they know like what shots guys are trying to get to. Like they just have way more intel on what you're trying to do, and it's not guys making plays, it's guys like getting to spots that they need to get to, and the defenders are there. It's like, oh shit, like so a 7-game series definitely brings a different dynamic, and I don't know, like they need Donovan Mitchell to be that player that he was against the Nuggets for 7 games, and then to get a little bit more from the other guys, and they might have something special. I know for sure that 1 seed is going to be very important because they don't want to have to play LA or LA in the second round. I know you'll have a lot to say about that 4/5 seed coming from Oregon, but they don't want to have to play Kawhi or LeBron in the second round. If they make those two guys play each other and they roll the dice against either of them once, they might end up in the finals. But if they have to play them twice, it's a tough road. So that 1 seed is going to be very important, and I'm happy to see them on their way to earning it.
Yeah, they're working very hard for it. I mean, speaking of, so I was gonna say like surprises in the West, which that kind of just ties right into your 4-5 talk. So the Suns are number 4 in this power rankings, and the Blazers are 8, and right now they're sitting at 4 and 5 in the West.
Are they back to okay? Are they in the power rankings? Who's 5, 6, and 7? Are those
5, 6, and 7 is Clippers 5, Sixers 6, Bucks 7, and then Blazers 8. And then rounding out the top 10 is Nuggets 9 and Spurs 10.
I'd be surprised if the Suns end up leapfrogging the Clippers in the rankings just because the Clippers just got healthy.
Right.
But I mean, no, I won't say it won't happen, but let's just pretend that we know for sure. Suns, Blazers, 4-5, first round of the playoffs. How do you see that series going? How do you win? How do you lose? Being the Blazers, obviously, because you're a huge Blazers fan.
Yep. I mean, I saw some stat that like the Blazers are like 7-1 when 6 or more guys score in double digits. So it's really just how many guys.
Season?
Yeah. And so the games that literally we just saw one of them not so against who did we just play? The Wizards. Only 5
Westbrook
guys.
Kryptonite, huh?
Yeah. No, Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal was the reason we lost.
Westbrook got that tripped up, dude. Lillard don't know how to handle him.
Lillard had like 39, so don't worry about that.
Carry on.
No, so all our whole starting 5 had double-digit points, and then our bench, the next highest scorer was like Carmelo, or I think it might have been Anthony Simons with like 8. And so just the depth. I mean, we don't have any depth right now, and that depth will be key going forward. And so Rocco and Dennis Smith Jr. kind of playing their roles. Dennis Smith playing in transition, Rocco 3 and D. When you get CJ back, there's going to be a lot more shots, but also a lot more scoring. Gary Trent will become either that 6-man, or I wouldn't hate starting Gary Trent and then having like Derek Jones coming off the bench or something. I love Gary Trent.
To the small forward spot?
Maybe. I think Gary Trent might be.
Dude. I don't know if he's long and tall and fast. He doesn't have any of those things to keep up with.
No, but the Blazers are also, we're like playing small already. I mean, Rocco's just, there were like speculations that Rocco plays small ball center.
Y'all are playing small because Cantor's the starting center.
Right.
But honestly, against the Suns, their forwards that start Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges.
And Frank Kaminsky is like their top one right now.
No, I'm talking about like small forwards.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Small forward, power forward at the starting spot, I think, is Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
And neither of those guys are physically imposing or super ball dominant like a lot of the starting small forwards in the West are.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a case to be made that CJ could keep up with those guys just as well as he would.
Honestly, maybe Gary Trent. Gary Trent is kind of a scrappy defender. He's not, putting up the statistical. Like, he's definitely more of a scorer. He doesn't quite have the 3 and D that Rocco does, but he's not a liability on defense. He's gotten some pretty good stops in big moments. I mean, against I'm forgetting who Dame like started off his absolute tear against. Gary Trent got like the Bulls. Yeah, Gary Trent got the game-saving jump ball, tied up, and then won the jump ball against Zach LaVine to get the ball to Dame for his step back. Which I mean, Dame, that's the next thing I want to talk about is Dame. I've been on it, but I'm officially declaring the Dame for MVP train. It's Stephen A. Smith said it best. I'm sorry, Damian Lillard. You have not, like, the basketball community has disrespected him the last 4 years, and it's time that he's in the conversation. And he finally is. I think last one I saw had him at like 4 or 5 in the polls, which can be worked on, but he's just been dominant. Most clutch player in the NBA, not even close. And he's the reason we're winning games. Like our other guys, and he's also like giving our other guys more confidence. So, I mean, he's been averaging almost like 12 assists in this last stretch of games. And that's why I was saying, like, when our guys are moving the ball more and distributing, we have 6 guys in double digits. That's when we're playing the best. And so Dame still gets his 30, 40, but when he's dishing out more than like 7, 8 assists, makes our whole team better.
I'm definitely on board with you that he belongs in the conversation very firmly, not just as like a side note, afterthought, toss his name in for good measure type thing, but like a serious contender. But thought experiment. Let's say LeBron keeps the Lakers at the 2 seed through AD's injury.
Right.
Let's say the Warriors hold on to what are they, like 6 or 7? Let's say.
I think they're 7 right now, but yeah.
Let's say like if they get him up to the 6 seed, now you've got Curry, LeBron. The other big ones are Embiid. If the Sixers keep their chokehold on the 1 seed, or if Kevin Durant finally gets healthy and the Nets take the 1 seed, or like have a chokehold on the 2 seed. I'm not exactly sure how 2, 3, 4 are shaking out right now.
Right.
I know none of those teams are being super stellar. The Bucks are on a slide. The Celtics have been hit or miss lately. The Nets are hot, but I don't know. I'm always sus of the Nets. Regardless, there's a lot of good candidates this year because the league is so balanced.
Definitely.
And so talented. It's always been talented, but it's so balanced. Do you believe that Damian Lillard has a glimmer of hope to actually win this MVP trophy?
I think it depends. I mean, it's just the age-old debate of what does that truly mean? Is it the best player on the best team, the most important player to his team? There's just a lot more factors. I think in terms of like the effect that Dame has had on the Blazers as opposed to those other teams, like, if the Warriors go up 1 spot or the Lakers hold that number 2 spot, like Dame brought the Blazers up to the 5 spot. I can realistically see hopefully a 4 spot. Optimistically reaching for a 3, but that's less likely. I know. But I could definitely see him overtaking the Suns at 4. And so then overall records come into play, which right now we have a comparable record to the Sixers. This East is a lot more balanced than the West. And so out of pure records, it's pretty much a wash between Dame and Embiid. And I mean, it's going to come down, at the end, but I think yes is my quick answer. I think he's been absolutely dominant, like single-handedly taking over games. Like as we've seen, Dame time, clutch time. It's amazing to watch as a Blazers fan.
TV.
It is. So what do you think?
Although we did not see him win the game when I was in Philly with y'all. Who were they playing? The Mavs, I think.
Right? Oh yeah, because we actually beat a team by more than 3 points for once.
Was that what it was, that they won by too much?
We were up by they started going on a stretch and they were up like 12, and then I think they won by 8 or 9, and so they didn't need him to do some last minute heroics.
Yeah, Dame's soft. I couldn't agree more. So yeah, Dame for MVP. Don't hate the take. I'm not bought in that he's the favorite.
He's definitely not the favorite.
I think if LeBron keeps playing like he's playing with AD out, LeBron's going to make himself the favorite. But I think Embiid should get it right now because the Sixers are an out of nowhere 1 seed and he's playing MVP basketball.
Are they out of nowhere though? Because they've always been kind of a top seed in the West or in the East, and they finally got the big thing they've been missing, which is perimeter shooting. They got Danny Green, who, I hate Danny Green, but he is known as a perimeter, 3-and-D perimeter shooting guy. And the person I do love is Seth Curry. He's been electric, super efficient. Seth Curry, I miss Seth Curry on the Blazers.
Yeah.
And so
I
they lack
do
like a little
think
bit of
that
depth.
you can still qualify them as an out of nowhere team, considering they got swept in the playoffs last year by the Celtics. It might have been a gentleman's sweep,
I
but I
think
don't think they won more than one game in the series.
that sounds right.
And so for them to have an ironclad grasp on the one seed and to only seem to be getting better, despite all their beneficial roster maneuvers, Daryl Morey's done some good work there, obviously. I would love a Sixers Nets playoff series. I
That
know
would
it wouldn't be a main focus of the series, but a Daryl Morey versus James Harden revenge showdown, like who won the breakup, that would make my day if the Sixers ended up taking the cake. Not only because I love to watch the Nets lose, but it would just be great to see James Harden lose to Daryl Morey of all people. Um,
really fun.
but also I just think Embiid's playing really fucking good. I watched him play the Bulls last night, or not last night, maybe 2 or 3 nights ago. Levine was going off, but Embiid was just too much. He's too much
Yep.
for everybody.
He was hooping. I'm not taking anything away from Embiid. He deserved his all-star starting position, which Dame,
Yeah.
I cannot believe Dame did not get that.
Yeah, we don't even need to talk about that. That's just blasphemy.
I know we won't. I just wanted to say exactly that. I can't believe it.
My side take before we pivot to this road trip that we took, my side take on the Sixers while we're here is that I think the Sixers deserve 2 All-Stars on their team. I think that's pretty clear given that they're a 1 seed.
Okay.
And that the East has 4 teams with a winning record.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So I think the Sixers really deserve 2 All-Stars. And I know Ben Simmons has been red hot over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. But I think there's a very strong case to be made that Tobias Harris should be their second All-Star.
Tobias Harris that was the biggest laments of Philly fans last year was that Tobias Harris was just not panning out, not worth did he get paid a max or was it just close to a max?
He got paid a max.
Yeah, and they're like, we paid you a max to come here and put up, 17 a game or whatever he was averaging.
It feels like an oxymoron to say All-Star Tobias Harris because he's always been that guy that's really good, but definitely not good enough to be an All-Star, at least just by the eye test.
Right.
But this year, not only is he a 40, 50, 90 guy, which is huge. I know it's getting less huge as everyone gets better and better at shooting, but I still think being a 40, 50 guy is huge. 40, 50, 90.
Yeah.
And also when you consider the fact that shooting is so important for that Sixers success, they need floor spacing for Embiid to thrive. Embiid gets so much space this year. I'm pretty sure Embiid is sitting right now as the best mid-range jump shooter in the entire league.
Sheesh.
Mid-range in terms of free throw line caliber jump shots, just because when he ISOs in the high post, there's so much shooting around him that his defender is basically on an island, one-on-one with Embiid. And if you press up on him to prevent him from getting a totally clean look, you're getting buried.
Yes.
You need to give yourself space in order to go and hit him when he drives at you to try and slow him down. That's the best solution. It's not a good solution. And so he's getting a ton of those wide open free throw jump shots. He's eating everyone everywhere else, getting a ton of spacing on the perimeter. And if Ben Simmons had made even the sorriest attempt at becoming a good 3-point shooter and contributing to that essential component of the Sixers' success, I would turn right around and give him the All-Star bid just because he's a great defender, so nasty in transition, can create for everyone. He has such a unique skill set based on his body size and the things that he can do. It's very impressive. And I think ultimately Ben Simmons will be more important in raising the Sixers ceiling and making them a true finals contender. But Tobias Harris makes their floor so huge. And when you look at a regular season award and how well he's doing what he needs to do, I think Tobias Harris, if you have to pick a second All-Star, Tobias Harris is the guy. It's razor thin, but I'm going to say it's not that close because I think Tobias Harris should get it, and I'll be extra confident. So
I don't hate that. I like Tobias Harris a lot. I liked him a lot in Detroit, right? That was where he started. I liked him a lot less in LA. And so
He did reunite with Doc Rivers, which I think has helped his productivity. Also, he got rid of Bryce Brown, Butt Brown, whatever the old
You never
Sixers
know
coach
his
name
name.
was. I would,
You always do that same progression.
yeah. I don't know his name, and I'm glad I don't because he doesn't deserve me to know his name. I would always be very entertained with Jared or Connor or whatever Celtics fan you're sitting next to, just like making a mockery of him as Celtics coach Brad Stevens just diced him to bits. But that's aside the point. R.I.P. Bruce, Bryce, Butt Brown. We have Doc Rivers and we have the 1 seed Sixers, and we're excited to see it. Philly.
Yes, sir. Philly.
So, what's next?
I do want to talk about a little bit about Texas and the wild stuff going on there.
Lay it on me.
And the environmental.
This is classic warm weather people not being able to deal with the cold. I know there's more serious implications to this, and you're going to probably bring up climate change and people dying, but
yes, I am.
It's also mildly entertaining to me.
Texas has been hit by its biggest storm in close to a century. It's not quite 100 years, but it's way more snow than they were ever anticipating getting. Record lows. And the state just cannot handle it. There's millions of people without power, and there have been like tens of, I don't think it's quite into the hundreds of thousands of people, but it's a lot of people have just been freezing to death because their power grid can't sustain the infrastructure, and exactly that. Like there's it's just an absolute shit show. They are not prepared for this. They don't have the infrastructure to clear the roads. Like water pipes are freezing. The wind turbines are frozen, and everyone's trying to point fingers at everyone else. And a lot of people are in trouble for it.
Let me tee you up with a facade of ignorance. I've read all the news reports that say it's the wind turbines freezing up that are really causing the gist of the problem here. The reason that no one's got power is because all this clean energy mumbo jumbo is just mucking up the works, and that's why people are freezing, and we need to rely more on oil and coal and shit like that. What do you have to say?
I have to say that could not be farther from the truth. While it is a fact that the wind turbines are freezing, the main the wind only accounts for about 15% of Texas's energy production, and the main system that has been failing them has actually been the coal. Their coal refineries, their coal distribution, their coal power plants. And so actually it's been the fossil fuels that have been failing them more so than the renewables. But as I said, government officials are looking to point fingers wherever they can so that it's not their fault. And so it's quick. It's really easy to point at Biden and his Green New Deal and saying that they've already tried to say it's been taking away jobs with the Keystone Pipeline, which is a whole other issue. TLDR is that temporary jobs don't count as being taken away because they were never there to begin with. And so that's just a flawed argument, but it's the same thing. The arguments the same. They literally say that green energy accounts for 15% of the energy generated in Texas. And my first thought is, okay, what about the other 85% that's also not working? Like, you can't just pick one part that you already don't like and try to say that that's the reason things still aren't working, because it's just objectively false. And then I saw this dude that was he was just really just rude about the whole thing. Tucker Carlson, there's his name. I cannot stand that guy. And so he started, he's like, well, fortunately for Texas, he's like, global warming is a thing of the past because most of the state's been hit by record low temperatures and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, he was just so pretentious.
Global warming anymore.
Exactly. I mean, he was just like, there's no other way to say it. He was like, just for the sake of it. And it was rubbing me the wrong way. I got super heated, and I've been complaining to everyone I can tell about it because it was like ignorant. It was just.
Before we get off this, so you don't blow your top, I want to ask, have you seen any evidence that would suggest had Texas had a higher proportion of green energy, let's say instead of 15% wind, they were 65, 70, 80, whatever number you want to put on it. Let's say they were a higher proportion wind, would they have been better prepared for this type of situation? Would they have fewer residents without power? Would they have fewer problems? Or is really the root of the issue like nothing's going to work in this cold, which doesn't seem true because it's cold in other places and they don't die. And so, like, is the root of the issue we just need to have a more serious pivot away from things that cause climate change and things that cause it to get cold in Texas? Or is wind going to be an actual solution for them there?
Yeah, well, so the whole point of renewables is you use the resources that are there when they're there. That's the whole. It's not a constant influx of energy, and so when there's days where the wind doesn't blow, there's days when the turbines freeze. That's why like the big part of renewable energy is kind of diversifying with the solar, the hydroelectric, the wind turbines. I'm also a big proponent of nuclear. A lot of environmentalists aren't as big of fans because it does still technically have waste, but that's a topic for another day. We can talk about that next week. I love nuclear. I can go on and on about nuclear. But the real problem is just America's energy infrastructure in general. I saw a stat that was like it would only take two, I think. Oh, I need to find the stat. It would take two major outages at like our 11 major distribution centers for like half the country to lose all its power.
Yeah, this is actually to take away from the climate chat. It's actually a pretty big point of emphasis for like terrorism as well. Like it's a major terrorist target. They could take out entire power grids with like two pivotal points.
Exactly. And so that's part of what the Green New Deal, or at least what I assume, I need to see Biden, because the problem is that there's like the Green New Deal that everyone's been talking about for forever and ever. And then there's Biden's version of the Green New Deal, which is notably different because it made all the people that were really fans of that really upset because it didn't quite match all their things. But the whole point is that he had to be a little more central because he's running for president of the United States, not president of the Democrats. And so I need to figure out what specifically that is. But that's the whole point, is that it adds more diversity, more points on our power grid so that it's not all centralized by these major fossil fuel centers. And I mean, yeah, that's just been a problem for a lot of, I mean, that's what America is seeing kind of in general with, we just have a lot of dated systems that were projected, they're only projected to last 50, 60 years. And now we're in year 55 or whatever. I'm pulling those numbers randomly, but it's that time frame. Like they're planned obsolescence systems that are now showing why they weren't supposed to be the one fit one all what be all let all. I can't figure out that phrase.
They weren't supposed to be doing, and they're doing it still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing at Swarthmore. Like our heating system is deteriorated. Like it's so old that they can't find, like young engineers can't work on it because it's so outdated. They don't teach it anymore. And
obsolete.
So it's literally the definition of obsolete. And so that's the whole big part of the green movement, is kind of advancing into this next age of energy that won't, well, it's one is better for the environment so that we don't have stuff like this happening. Because newsflash, oh my gosh, my favorite, I don't know if I sent it to you. I just saw my favorite tweet ever was Ted Cruz tweeted, "I'll believe in climate change when Texas freezes over," from 2016.
Dude, I hate to break it to you, but I read reports that that tweet was doctors.
I can't imagine you would actually say that, and it's too perfect to be true. But my point still stands. This is happening in places that it hasn't happened in forever, and I mean, it was like 92 or 90% of the country was covered or had like sub-freezing temperatures or whatever. Like that's not normal.
Problematic.
Yeah, Florida and California are sitting there like, what are you guys complaining about? And everyone else is like, it's cold, dude. What do you mean?
Cold,
and so
the Starbucks drive-thru is covered in ice.
I'll put up one of those pictures. Yeah.
And with that legendary transitional phrase, we're gonna go right into our road trip.
What we've been doing for, I was gonna say the past 2 weeks, but now it's been a week. But what we spent a significant amount of time doing for most of
An
February.
unscheduled portion of days. um, yeah. So Spice lives in California. In case you didn't know, he's from California. He's vegetarian. He can play guitar. I mean, you've heard it 1,000 times. Um, and for whatever reason, he decided he wanted to live in Philly for several months. And apparently, there's a lot of states in between here and there. So he said, Nate, we're going on a road trip. Spice had a stroke of genius inviting one of his only friends that doesn't have a driver's license on a road trip. So I was chief passenger. I don't mean to brag. I had a lot of responsibilities, mostly taking up space and talking, but we
Essential.
went, yeah, we spent 10, 12, 14 days going from Marietta, California to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
I don't know if we ever did the math finally. We left on Wednesday and we showed up the Sunday after. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 11.
Our very, very scenic route, we did do this math.
Yes.
That route took us over 5,000 miles, including a couple hundred in the back of a tow truck, but we'll get to that. So, day one, what do you remember from day one?
The two iconic moments was one, getting to Vegas, taking donations from the team as we went, and putting it all on red.
Dude, I got it right here.
Oh, let's go.
It's got a red clip on it and a little note that says "whole lot of red banging."
Whole lot of red banging.
That's
That
going in
was
somebody's pocket eventually, but
that was
a lot of red
electric.
banging.
Yes. And then going from there to the Hoover Dam, where I had like both like a super nerve-wracking but also very hilarious interaction with the security at Hoover Dam. Because so we got there, they see all the stuff in the back of my car, like, okay, you need to pull over and we need to check this out a little more. And I pull over, the guy like runs me through, he's like, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna open the boot, I'll point to things, you're gonna open them.
He did not say boot.
Sorry, trunk. You're right. I say boot. So you're gonna open the, I think he said open the back. He said open the back. He's like, you're gonna open anything I need you to ask. And then, hopefully you can get on your way. I was like, sounds good. So I get out my mask and everything. And he's like pointing at things. I'm like, yeah, I was like telling him, like, this is all my pots and pans. I'm moving to Philly. This is clothes and stuff. And like lifted them up so you could see under. And then he pointed to my guitar case because, as I found out from flying with a guitar, it's just people seldom actually use those to carry guitars. And so whenever I fly with it, whenever I fly with it, I always get the TSA, like, this bag has been checked, paper in it. And so he had me open it. And then I went to go like show him the inside thing. And he's like, no worries. And he asked me, like, do you play? And I was like, yeah. And then he like hesitated. I'm like, do you want me to play something? And so I played Blackbird very nervously for the like 5 security people standing around us. And my heart was beating very fast because even though I knew I had nothing to hide, I was still very nervous.
Spice was rattled? ? Has this ever happened?
Never happened before. I've never been rattled in my life.
I'll say sitting in the passenger seat at the front of the car while you're at the back sounded great. You did not sound rattled, so that's a put up to your composure. Bravo.
It was internal rattled.
Internal rattled.
Facade of calm. And so yeah, then the next night or that night we made it to Grand Canyon in the pitch black, and chaos ensued.
Yeah, we made it to the Grand Canyon really late. You'd been, I hadn't, so it's like, all right, well, it was after dark by the time we got there, so we didn't even make an attempt to go see anything. We had plans to spend like 3 hours noodling around before moving on the next morning. And we get up bright and early. You were shocked that it could be below freezing when you wake up in the morning.
I was
18 degrees.
Brutally reminded of this thing called winter that every state but California has.
Yes, that was very entertaining. At just about every stop, you were just bewildered. But we got past it, got in the car, turned it on, and that shit didn't work quite as well as it's supposed to.
No, we got a major error message, and after a lot of phone calls, we found out we were going to have to take it to Phoenix to get looked at.
Which is like 200 miles south of the Grand Canyon.
So it is.
Yeah, we couldn't. There's no rental cars in this touristy town spot that we're staying in, right by the south rim of the Grand Canyon. No rental cars, no taxis to get us to a rental car. Uh, Nothing really. Like just one really helpful receptionist at the Grand Canyon Plaza Hotel. Shout out Kelsey.
Shout out Kelsey. We
You're a
both give her
lifesaver
5-star
in life.
reviews. Yep.
Grand Canyon Plaza Hotel, great family location for the South Rim Grand Canyon visitation situation.
Can't recommend enough.
Yeah. Um, so we said, shit, let's just ride in the cab with the tow truck driver and go down to Phoenix with this busted car and see what they say. And they said, it's busted. And I was like, we need a new car.
And thus, 2 days later, or a day and a half later, no, it was pretty much 2 days later. We got there. I don't
We
know.
got there around lunchtime,
Yeah.
probably a little bit later on day 2 of our trip. And we left shortly before dinner on day 3. So we spent a good 30, 36 hours in Phoenix getting rid of one car and figuring out which one we wanted to replace it. And we landed on a beautiful girl named Kelsey, named after our receptionist. If you're watching this, Kelsey, we're very appreciative and we're not that weird.
We need to find out how to get this to Kelsey.
But I'll say my biggest takeaway from Kelsey is very fortuitous musical timing. Is we get there to the Range Rover dealership, they say this car is really effed up and it's gonna take a lot of money and a lot of time to fix it. So let's trade it in. We looked at the Range Rover dealership. They didn't really have anything that we wanted to trade for. We go 2 doors down to the Audi dealership. They had something we really wanted to trade for, the right number of miles, the right price, the right specs. Everything looked good. We're driving around the lot. We can't find it. What the hell? Where's this car? We go into the dealership to go talk to somebody. We ask the guy, like, this is what we want, the model number or whatever. They need a specific spec to
Yeah.
pull out a key. And so the guy hustles to the back. And we hadn't been in the building for 30 seconds. And Thin Lizzy, the boys are back in town, comes over the loudspeakers in there. And I was like, wow, like this is the car we're gonna get. I already know, like it's just gonna happen. Like that's Good Vibes song number 5 out of 5 in the rotation. Like it's elite for sure. Both amongst our team and amongst the entire world. And that's how I knew. It took another 24 hours before we ended up signing any papers. We had you,
Yep.
but we ended up with that car. Lo and behold. So that's my 2 cents. What's your biggest takeaway from buying your first car?
That I prefer window shopping with my dad a lot more than the actual buying process of a car. It was a lot, and it made me feel very adult in a way that I wasn't ready to feel yet at 21 years old. But
I'm
exactly,
really out here in fucking Arizona.
North Scottsdale.
You know it, baby.
Uh-huh. But yeah, no, we got it working, and I didn't think it was real. We're driving off in the car, and I felt like we were stealing it. Even though I just spent a lot of hours signing a lot of paper saying it was my car. But
I fell asleep. That's the first thing I did in that car.
which
That's
is
how you know it's a good ride.
another good omen, yeah. And the rest was just a great road trip, really.
Yeah,
Straight
from there we went back to the
immediately
Grand Canyon.
to the Grand Canyon where we couldn't see anything.
Yeah, it was a very dramatic maiden voyage for Kelsey, all the way to the visitor parking lot in the national park itself. Couldn't really see anything because the sun had set more or less, but the next morning a bunch of fun viewpoints in the Grand Canyon, a bunch of good panos and selfies. Headed north,
Yep.
went to Zion,
Yep.
and that night sun had set again, and we were noodling through the bowl of spaghetti known as the road into Zion. It's basically a road folded up on itself 8 times just to get down the canyon.
Literally.
Woke up, hustled north to Park City, watched the Super Bowl with Pete and Jared, the guys. Shout out Tom Brady. Winners always win, baby.
Greatest quarterback of all time. It's official.
For sure.
It's official. That was the
Perhaps the
last thing.
GOAT athlete. I love to talk about that, but that's another day. Perhaps the GOAT athlete. Um,
The debates there, and then,
then from Park City, we were meant to head west from there, but there was a ton of snow, so we ended up missing out on Colorado Springs and Lincoln, Nebraska, and heading back south to Zion again, which seeing it in the daylight was definitely worth it.
and through
Absolutely
Bryce.
stunning. Yes, I would not have forgotten. Bryce on the way down to Zion was also jaw dropping. Two
Oh
very, very visually stunning national parks. Highly recommend. Whether you get to spend 10 minutes or a whole day there or a whole week, I imagine it's also very fruitful.
yep.
It's definitely worth it to get it off your bucket list. So Bryce National Park, Zion National Park, two names that I don't think I was fully aware of before we started planning out this trip, and that
Really?
I'm very
Okay.
glad we ended up seeing.
Yeah, Bryce. I think Bryce in the snow is also just a whole other. Like I've been there in the summer, I think when it was really hot, and the snow is just jarring. Like because it's already super cool topography of these just pillars of rocks, and then that of like red, bright red. Like it doesn't seem like a real color.
It adds a lot to the texture and the color palette, and it's like you had mentioned that it almost looks like it's hovering above, like it's not even part of the rock formations. It's just some weird optical illusion. But I mean, we'd be remiss to suggest that we could even begin to describe
Exactly.
what we were seeing at these places. It was
And
stunning. We'll
the
leave it at
pictures
that.
barely do it justice.
Yeah, get your ass out there. Thank you. Next.
Yep.
So from Zion, we spent a second night in Zion, and then
Go
we
through our
went
favorite city, Flagstaff, Arizona.
we went through Flagstaff 6 times. We don't even need to begin to describe that, but just imagine a road trip in which you're going from one side of the country to another. You need to go through Flagstaff 6 times. It's just the road less traveled.
It is. No, it is.
Robert Frost. So from Zion, the second night we went back to
Albuquerque.
we went to Albuquerque, which was we didn't do anything there. So I mean, Albuquerque might be cool. We wouldn't have known.
Right. We were
And then we went to from Albuquerque, we went to Amarillo, Texas, but our big stop on that day was White Sands National Park, which was also very, very cool. Not necessarily something that you like pull over and look at on the side of the road real quick. Like it's definitely super weird to see like a white desert of white sand dunes, like just pure pale white out of nowhere. Something to see, but a lot more fun just to run around and play in. Definitely a different vibe from a national park, but
you gotta
stunning.
rent.
And
Yeah, you gotta rent the sled, and you just gotta experience it. There's nothing really we can say that would do it justice as well.
you got to bathe in the gypsum. That's what it is. I mean,
Gypsum. Yep.
that's what it's not sand like sand at the beach. It feels a lot like it, like East Coast sand versus West Coast sand. If any of y'all have any idea about those differences, but it's like it's a different material that it's made out of, not just plain rock, but gypsum. And gypsum, for whatever reason, deflects heat. So if you stick your hand down under the sand, it feels like it's in a bucket of ice water almost. So you could be running around in the Arizona sun and then just lay down and you'll cool off. And it's very fun. It's very fun just to spend an hour, spend a day, just like Bryce, just like Zion. Check it out. Very cool.
Absolutely.
But that night we ended up in Amarillo,
Amarillo,
fun little
Texas.
city. That was our first really cold night, I think, where you were like, oh
That
wow,
was
it
when
is
winter.
winter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Albuquerque and Zion weren't very cold. Grand Canyon wasn't cold until unless the sun was hiding, and
Yep.
then you might have noticed it. But Amarillo was definitely your first like sustained dose of winter. Like you could tell it was cold even inside the car.
Yep.
From there, we spent a night in Little Rock.
Yeah. From there, we tried to speed. We tried to make us some time.
Yeah, we had dipsy doodled enough. It was time to get somewhere. So Albuquerque, Amarillo, Little Rock to Nashville. We stopped in Memphis for a bit. Little Rock to Nashville was a pretty short stint. So we had some fun in Memphis. Saw Beale Street, which I'm sure is just so damn cool when there's music playing and people out and the sun's shining. That's a bucket list item for sure for me, big
Yep.
blues guy. The pyramid was cool to see, take a picture with. I don't know why there's some big, absurdly shaped Bass Pro Shops in the middle of America, but I can't say I'm surprised to see it. And from Memphis, we spent the night in Nashville with Courses folks.
Yes, sir.
Endlessly charming and endlessly, what's the word I'm searching for?
Hospitable.
Hospitable. Yes. I had hospitality. I
Oh my
did not
gosh.
know how to turn it into what I needed. But yes, they were. It was better than the Holiday Inn, which is a lot for us because
Staying
we
a lot.
love the Holiday Inn.
No, they blew Holiday Inn out the water. Definitely. Oh,
Those
and yeah.
pancakes alone.
Oh my gosh. Don't
It's
even.
wild to say, but they beat my mom's pancakes. Put some butter in the pan. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. They got that crispy finish to them. And Spice, the vegetarian that doesn't eat fruit, he takes it a little too literally. Didn't want blueberry pancakes. He wanted plain pancakes. He didn't eat the fruit that they offered.
That's nothing.
Spice doesn't like fruit. Like, dude, like,
That's not true. I
fruits
just
are a part of being a vegetarian. But we
they
can
are
move on from this. You just don't like fruit. It's weird. Next thing.
country music. Hall of
Nashville.
Fame.
Oh, our big stop in Nashville, aside from seeing the chorus, was the Country Music Hall of Fame,
Those
which I had a
pancakes
ton of
got you
fun
so
at.
distracted.
Yeah. Country Music Hall of Fame was outstanding.
Yeah, no.
Loved being there.
I know. What were your least favorite part? I know you weren't super stoked about the huge Casey Musgraves exhibit just because you didn't really know her that well. But like what I'm a very casual country music fan, so a lot of that I recognize. The more modern names like Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, Carrie Underwood, I think was in there. Yeah. But some of your prime listening, I knew just from you playing it for the last few days, but didn't have any.
I have a good contemporary country music library, but not a great one. Like I said, I'm missing some big names, like you said, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of my country music taste has been inherited from this from my dad, the one and only. And so he loves a lot of Willie Nelson stuff. I've gotten a lot of Waylon Jennings and uh, shoot, what else am I missing here? Jerry Jeff Walker is the man. I want to have him batting cleanup because he's got all my favorite songs. And that was my favorite part of the entire exhibit was seeing a guitar that Jerry Jeff Walker had gifted to Guy Clark. Two guys that sang probably two of our 5 most played songs of the entire road trip. So that was very cool just to see sort of behind the curtain of like how these, for me at least, iconic country singers had like just been casual friends, you know, like he gave him a guitar, like, yo, you like music, I like music, country's cool, like here's a guitar, like, and just to see that guitar in the Country Music Hall of Fame, that was my favorite exhibit for sure, even though it was just like rather unimpressive part of their entire display. Like they had a lot of very cool stuff, but that's the one that stuck out to me. I'm glad you pointed it out to me because I would have missed it.
I only knew those names, like I said, because you've been playing them so much. But yeah, no, I mean, even as a like I said, a very casual country music fan, you can just appreciate the history and just, I don't know, how far country music's come and how big it still is.
Hey, man.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.
Sheet.
And then, yeah, our last leg of our trip was altered at the last minute. We were going to go visit some buddies through Charlottesville and then DC on the way to Philly. And there was a massive, like, freezing rainstorm sweeping through that lower part.
Yeah, freezing rain coming out of the south had us take a slightly more direct route through Morgantown, West Virginia. We got food from a restaurant that we were surprised to find out was in a municipal airport. It's not every day that you have door 1, like restricted TSA, Department of Homeland Security, do not enter. And door number 2 is this is your takeout meal, which was interesting for me wandering through the municipal airport of Morgantown, West Virginia. Other than that, not a lot to be said about West Virginia. Our last day got us to Philly, and we got within 5 minutes of our final destination before we
Less than a
had our,
mile.
yeah, less than a mile before we had our first real uh, on road issue. I mean, we had an entire car breakdown, but that was not immediately dramatic compared to this particular situation. I'll let Spice take the reins because this is an interesting story for him to tell.
Yeah, no. So we made it. We just did the math. 5,000 plus miles.
We had just done the math.
Yeah, it was less than that in this specific car, but without an issue. We were skating storms. We were really careful to drive as little as possible at night, and we were feeling good. And so the end was in sight. I literally had thought of that stat, but I had not said it. Where I almost said out loud, like, "Oh, we're almost there." But everyone says most accidents occur within like 2 miles of your house. And moments after I was even thinking it, where I'm yielding off the exit of a highway, I see a car zooming down. I stop because I'm not trying to I have a yield, and then just boom, right into the back of me.
Yeah, you were at like a T coming off the exit ramp.
Yeah.
And you had come down, you're waiting to turn right at the red light, and you thought about going, and then you changed your mind and stopped. And whoever was behind you was rolling down the hill and saw you start to go and didn't see you stop and bonked you. And in the aftermath, I remember you telling me, like, I expected to walk around the backside of this car and see the entire thing just gashed to pieces.
I was terrified. I was rattled. I will say that. That was one of the times I was outwardly and inwardly rattled. And I just didn't even.
Great, though. It was great because it was a minor scratch. The guy was just enough Delco. I mean, obviously it wasn't great because we got rear-ended, but it was great in the sense that he gave us all the stuff. He didn't try and hassle us. He didn't try and like say there was no damage. Because there was barely damage, but yeah, was damage. He didn't try and jerk us around at all, which was good.
Yeah.
But he just spent 5 minutes telling us about all the other people he'd run into before he drove off, which was entertaining. And
things he'd hit.
Yeah, reaffirming for us. I mean, obviously you're not at fault getting rear-ended, but it always feels good to hear someone say how bad they are, you know?
No, it was.
We made it. We made it to your.
We did. No, we did. We pulled in. Never thought we'd make it. And
it was almost like, wait, really? Like, we're here, you know? Like we had never picked a date to actually get there. And we had never like been like, all right, we need to get here by this time or anything. Like there was never any sort of like 3-5 X day plan.
No.
For us to show up in Philly. So when we got there, it was almost like, where's the Holiday Inn? Like, you know, it just felt like a sort of an endless loop of Holiday Inns. Like we're just like, what other cool shit are we gonna see tomorrow? Like I woke up the next day, like we don't have to get on the road right now. Like I don't have to wake up Spice for the 8th time this week.
I was always awake. You would just be like, all right, it's time to get ready. And I'm like, all right, I was waiting for you to get out of the shower. Dang.
You would be really mad that I got out of the shower because that means you would have to get into the shower. It's like, oh shit, I can't lay here in bed anymore. Yep. And I always had a good time reminding you of that fact.
Oh, and so yeah, 11 days, 5,000 plus miles, 2 cars.
None of them.
Yeah. 2 cars, 1 minor accident, and a lot of good memories. All right, signing off. Go and love yourself. When you told me you hated my friend, the only problem